Thank you, panel 2. Panel 1.
Okay. So when Henrietta was admitted to the hospital, she did sign a contract. And the contract is this. I hereby give consent to the staff of the Johns Hopkins Hospital to perform any operative procedures under any anesthetic, either local or general, that they may deem necessary in the proper surgical care and treatment of, and in the blank space, Henrietta Lacks printed her name. As you can see from this contract, the taking of the cells was not a direct result of the disease. The contract itself said that the doctors at Johns Hopkins Hospital were only going to do things that would help the patient, only do things that would, they were only going to perform any operative procedures that were going to be set in place in order to aid the patient in fighting their disease. And it had no mention whatsoever of the taking of her own tissue, and the tissue itself that was taken was not left over from any treatment or surgery that she had agreed to in the contract. It was specifically taken without the permission of the patient.
The moderator would like to take this time to remind all debaters that we'd like to hear from everyone on both sides of the panel. Thank you. And panel 2.
Well, KJ was saying about how the contract didn't require. You said, what did you say again, KJ? You said that the contract did not require.
The contract did not have any mention of the taking of the patient's cells. It only mentioned that they were to perform any operative procedures under any anesthetic and in the necessary proper surgical care.
Okay, so the point that I would like to point out is we have to define the term of property on a person. Is property when your organs, your tissues are on you at the moment, or are they when they are removed from you? When does that make you deem it as property of yourself? And also, once property is excised from a person, like through medical research or stuff like that, it isn't violating their rights unless their terms of privacy is, like, violated. Henrietta's name was not released when her cells were released into the medical world. They were used under her scientific name, Gila. So under that, her property rights, her privacy rights were in no way violated.
Thank you, panel 2. Panel 1.
I was going to say that her property would be probably like her DNA, and that she gave no consent for this to be taken, so technically it would still be belonging to her. And then the fact that they kept this a secret for so long that even after Henrietta's death that they made no attempt to contact the family, like further increase that there's something wrong here. Like they didn't tell the family about the testing of the cells or anything at all, they just kept this a big secret. And they're like taking her property from her cells without her consent.
Thank you, panel 1. Panel 2.
As Katie said, the hospital is doing the best for the patient, and if the family are aware of what the doctors are doing on her, they will be worried, as said in the later of the book. They are worried about what did they do, and if they don't know, if they, like now, they don't know that the doctors take her tissues, and they are not worried. So it's better for the family not to know about it than to tell them at the beginning.
Thank you, panel 2. Panel 1, would you like to respond?
Okay. We just like to talk about honesty and how, like, you know, we've always heard honesty is the best policy, and especially back when Henrietta was alive, it wasn't really exactly a policy when she was a patient in the Johns Hopkins Hospital. And what we'd like to accomplish is to change that and make sure that from now on it is a aspect of a patient's life. because honesty is an important way to foster trust and show respect for the patient, and none of that was happening to Henrietta. She was dehumanized and degraded, and it was not okay.
Thank you, panel 1. Panel 2? Rebecca?
Well, Erin said that Henrietta was dehumanized, but it wasn't that the doctors were trying to like sneak her cells and not let her know. It was just that once the cells were taken from Henrietta, those cells could no longer do anything for her. It's not like they were still in her and stuff. But if those cells could have been used to help somebody else, isn't it as a doctor their responsibility to try and help as many people as they can?
Thank you, panel 2. We have about 3 minutes left in this open debate, so I'll call panel 1, and we might have time for one more time back and forth. So know that when you're preparing your statement. Eliza?
Thank you. Panel 1 would like to bring to the attention of panel 2 the Tuskegee syphilis study. This started in the 1930s, and when the U.S. Department of Public Health researchers at Tuskegee Institute decided that they wanted to study how syphilis killed people, they recruited hundreds of African American men that already had syphilis and then watched them die slow, painful deaths. Even though they knew that penicillin would cure them, they did not use the penicillin to cure them. They observed the way that they died. The research subjects were poor and uneducated and had no say, and they didn't have any communication with the doctors, and they merely participated in this because they were given incentives such as a $50 stipend for their family when the men actually died. Henrietta Lacks didn't have any formal conversations with her doctor. She merely had a contract which, as we have already discussed, she did not actually give consent to have her tissues taken and researched and eventually donated and such. And just signing a contract is not the same as having conversations like we have now in modern medicine. So there was no honor. They didn't honor her conformed consent. She merely signed a paper.
Thank you, panel 1. We have about 1 minute left, so I'm going to ask for 30-second responses from each side before we begin our closing statement. So, panel 2.
In response to Eliza about the syphilis study, the descendants of the victims are researched. They received health care for their whole family for the rest of their life after this happened. And when you're considering whether you should test humans, what would you rather test otherwise? Would you rather test animals? Would you use electronic models? Either way, even if you test animals, the human genome is not nearly as specific and as precise and as similar than if you just do it directly on the humans. And also, when you're talking about how Henrietta didn't give consent to having her cells be taken, she also didn't give consent that they did not be taken. Done.
Thank you, panel 2. Panel 1?
Yeah. So, studying humans, yes, that's great. It's great scientific research, but you do need consent and appropriate conversations, as we stated before. So we just want to improve, the medical system. It shouldn't matter what race you are, how much education you have. Every patient should be treated the same. I'm sure white patients got treated with great respect, and they knew what was going on. It's great that Henrietta cells helped people, but she didn't consent to it, and it's just, you can't do that.
Thank you, panel 1. We'll now begin the closing statements. So, panel 2, if you would begin.
In the field of biomedical research, data can come in all forms and from all sources. In the case of Henrietta Lacks, her tissues were already being taken for the betterment of her health. Why should those cells not be used for the betterment of the health of the rest of the world? As for her family's complaints, the answer is clear. The use of HeLa cells from her tissue was not for money. Think, if you will, of a small boy with cancer in Ohio. His cells were sent to a lab at the University of California, Los Angeles, to see if his life could be salvaged. Because of the immortal cells provided by Henrietta Lacks, countless lives have been saved, and the field of biomedical research changed forever.
Thank you, panel 2. Panel 1.
A person's cells cannot be allowed to be taken for the sake of medical research. Progressions in medical fields cannot be made at the expense of human rights and human dignity. These cells are a person's personal property protected under the United States Constitution. Their body produces the cells, and they contain the person's DNA, and therefore, the person should retain all rights to these cells, regardless of whether or not they are attached to the person's body. The person feels dehumanized, as exhibited in the case of John Moore, whose cells were taken without consent and made into a cell line. There must be a way for a person to consent to the use of their cells in a way where they fully understand and knowingly agree to what is involved in the use of cells in scientific research. Doctors are educated people who, when they became doctors, accepted the task of protecting and informing their patient. We believe that only two things can be deemed justified to withhold the truth from a patient. If a patient asks you to withhold disclosure, or if the disclosure will cause real and predictable harm, such as a depressed patient actively becoming suicidal. 90% of people wish to be informed about their medical state, and we believe they have that right. There is great discrimination involved in the taking of cells. The poor and black people are the targets in taking of these cells. A black person deserves the same rights and treatment of a white person, and Henrietta Lacks was not given this right. Black people were again exploited in the Tuskegee syphilis study. A person who needs medical attention needs to be able to live or rest in peace, not made immoral through the use of their cells.
Thank you, panel 1. We now conclude our debate.
Okay, we're going to start in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, you didn't start filming.
Oh, is this coming now? Yes.
Oh! KJ, we're doing behind the scenes with the crew.
Oh yeah, this is great. I don't like to make,
Anyway, started. Yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna put you guys in the doggies right now.
Okay.
Wait, how do you do it?
I don't know.
Oh, you're in the future. I'm gonna cut a joke.
Do the moon dance. I like it.
Well, no, you can't like it. Because we have to wait for Mr. Mountain. KJ, would you mind telling us a bit about the debate you're about to have?
I would mind.
Brother! Okay.
KJ are on the same debate team again, so the other team is so you know what? Josiah equals geniuses. John and Josiah forever and ever and ever.
You were pretty good. First debate, you did very well. Okay, somebody's going.
You did well.